The 1990s was a pivotal decade in the automotive world. High-performance cars like the Dodge Viper, Ferrari F50, Subaru Impreza, and Porsche Boxster captured the imagination of car enthusiasts everywhere. These cars brought speed, power, and a sense of thrill to the open road. But the 90s weren't all about hits. For every Dodge Viper that roared to life, there were cars that left buyers shaking their heads in disappointment. Some failed due to engineering flaws, while others just didn't live up to their promise. Today, we're diving into some of those misfires, the cars that didn't quite make the cut despite their initial potential. Let's take a closer look. 90s cars that missed the mark. 1. Suzuki X-90. The Suzuki X-90 was one of those cars that tried to do too much and ended up doing very little. Imagine a two-seat SUV that couldn't quite decide if it was a sports car or an off-roader. The X-90 was powered by a modest 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine that churned out a meager 95 horsepower. On paper, that sounds like an SUV for casual city driving, but Suzuki's attempt to blend a rugged SUV aesthetic with the agility of a sports car simply didn't work. Practicality, not so much. Off-roading capability, barely. With its small, cramped cabin, the X-90 didn't provide the utility of a true SUV, and its lack of power made it feel underwhelming compared to actual sports cars of the era. It was quirky, sure, but it didn't last long enough to become a classic. In the end, the X-90 was discontinued after just 3 years in 1998. 2. Mercury Mountaineer. The Mercury Mountaineer was Ford's attempt to give the Explorer a more luxurious feel, but it didn't live up to expectations. Built on the same platform as the Ford Explorer, the Mountaineer should have been a step up, offering more comfort, refinement, and safety features. While it received some safety updates in 1999, it still came with a number of reliability issues that were impossible to overlook. Take, for instance, the problematic brake system, which was prone to failure, and the all-wheel drive system, which didn't inspire much confidence. Even more alarming, there were issues with the speed control switch overheating, potentially resulting in a fire under the hood. These issues led to more than 3.6 million recalls. Yes, you read that right, making the Mountaineer one of the more infamous vehicles of the 90s. 3. Dodge Stratus. The Dodge Stratus seemed like a solid option in the mid-90s if you were looking for a mid-size sedan. It offered more space than rivals like the Ford Contour and the Mercury Mystique, and its aggressive styling made it appealing to many. But the Stratus had one glaring issue: reliability. Engine problems were a major concern, with constant oil leaks leading to costly repairs. The power steering hose was also notorious for bursting, causing fluid to spill onto the exhaust manifold, creating a serious fire hazard. Despite its reasonable price and roomy interior, the Stratus was recalled a staggering 7 times, affecting over 3 million vehicles. 4. Chrysler Concorde. The Chrysler Concorde was all about style. With its sleek, futuristic design, it certainly looked the part. But looks can be deceiving. The 1999 Concorde was plagued with severe mechanical issues. Owners reported frequent engine problems, with oil starvation being a common issue that couldn't always be fixed with routine oil changes. The transmission was another weak link, often leaving drivers stranded or stuck in gears. To make matters worse, the car's paint tended to peel and fade prematurely, making it look worse over time. Despite Chrysler's efforts to position the Concorde as a more affordable alternative to luxury sedans, its reliability problems couldn't be ignored. It was recalled 5 times, affecting over 3.3 million vehicles. 5. Dodge Intrepid. The Dodge Intrepid had potential, offering a spacious cabin, smooth ride, and bold looks, but like its sibling, the Chrysler Concorde, it was plagued by serious mechanical issues. The Intrepid suffered from chronic engine failures due to coking, where carbon buildup prevented the engine from operating properly. And if you managed to avoid engine issues, you still had to contend with faulty automatic transmissions and electrical problems. The 1999 Intrepid alone was recalled at least 6 times, affecting more than 3 million cars. Despite its initial appeal, the Intrepid's lack of reliability made it a difficult car to recommend. 6. Ford Explorer. The 1998 Ford Explorer is another example of a car that had serious mechanical shortcomings despite its popularity. The standard 4-liter V6 engine wasn't exactly powerful, and it was prone to stalling, especially on hot days. If that wasn't enough, the Explorer's braking system was unreliable, with brake fluid leaks being a common issue. And let's not forget the electrical problems, including issues with the central locking system that could leave you locked out of your vehicle. In total, the 1998 Explorer was recalled 14 times. Yes, 14 times. performance. And yet, despite its frequent visits to the repair shop, it remains one of the most commonly purchased vehicles of its time. 7. Cadillac Catera. When Cadillac introduced the Catera in 1996, it was aiming to create a sporty, luxury sedan to compete with European rivals like the BMW 3 Series and Mercedes-Benz C-Class. Unfortunately, the Catera fell short on almost every front. Its design was bland, the interior quality didn't match the luxury brand standards, and the suspension was too soft for a sporty ride. On top of that, the Catera's engine had a reputation for coolant and oil leaks, and the timing belt tensioner frequently failed, resulting in major engine damage. Cadillac attempted to fix these problems with recalls, but the Catera's reputation never fully recovered. After just 5 years, it was discontinued. 8. Pontiac Sunfire. The 1997 Pontiac Sunfire wasn't exactly known for its performance. In fact, when it came to speed and power, it just didn't measure up to other cars in its class. The Sunfire was powered by a 2.4-liter 4-cylinder engine, which, while decent for its time, had one major drawback: it was loud. We're not talking about the throaty rumble of a sports car. No, this engine was noisy in a way that made it feel more like a lawnmower than a modern vehicle. Along with that, the car also had minor ignition, idling issues that seemed to pop up more often than you'd expect for a car in this price range. Now, if you own a 1997 Pontiac Sunfire, you might remember how much frustration the steering wheel caused. Numerous complaints were filed with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration (NHTSA), all revolving around the Sunfire's steering. The wheel felt too loose, and drivers experienced difficulty controlling the car in certain conditions. It's no surprise then that over 1.1 million Sunfire vehicles were recalled due to steering problems. In fact, the Sunfire ended up being recalled a total of 9 times, impacting over 3 million vehicles. 9. Plymouth Breeze. Moving on to the 1997 Plymouth Breeze, we see a car that was built with practicality in mind. Sometimes practicality comes at a cost. The Breeze was an economical vehicle, and while that made it affordable for many, it didn't come without its share of problems. It had a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, producing 132 horsepower, hardly thrilling, but enough to get from point A to point B without any fuss. However, this engine was also a source of recurring problems. Oil leaks were a common issue, especially with early models. In some cases, owners reported oil leaks showing up before the car had even hit 30,000 miles. For anyone on a budget, that's a headache. The cost of constant oil checks and repairs can quickly add up. Then there were the brakes. If you've ever experienced brake issues in a car, you know it's not something to take lightly. Some 1997 Plymouth Breeze owners shared the alarming experience of the brake pedal simply falling to the floor. Imagine that scenario while driving. You press down on the pedal and it goes straight to the floor without actually engaging the brakes properly. And unfortunately, replacing the brake cylinders didn't seem to resolve the issue for many of these owners. 10. Plymouth Prowler. Now, let's talk about the 1997 Plymouth Prowler. This car was a unique blend of retro styling and futuristic thinking. Its design was bold, daring, and unlike anything else on the road. With its exposed wheels and sleek lines, it almost looked like something straight out of a science fiction movie. But while the Prowler may have turned heads, the driving experience didn't live up to its looks. Under the hood, the Prowler was equipped with a V6 engine that, without a manual transmission, could only muster up 214 horsepower. For a car that looked like it should have been a high-performance beast, it just didn't deliver the thrills you'd expect. While 214 horsepower isn't exactly underpowered, it wasn't enough to make the Prowler feel like the sports car it appeared to be. Plus, with limited options like the automatic transmission, it felt like it couldn't live up to the expectations its design set. Sales numbers reflected this mismatch between style and performance. In its first year, Plymouth only sold around 457 units of the Prowler. The car didn't resonate with a broad audience, and its limited appeal ultimately led to its downfall. The Prowler was also plagued by issues with its spindles, leading to yet another recall. The problem was serious enough that Plymouth had to bring the car back in for repairs. Eventually, the Prowler was discontinued in 2002 under Chrysler's management, marking the end of its short-lived run. But for all its issues, the Prowler remains an interesting piece of automotive history. If you're into quirky cars, the Prowler is one of those vehicles you'd have to see up close. It's a reminder that sometimes style can win over substance, but only for so long.